If you're a Harry Potter fan, then stick around, because you're about to discover 46 behind the scenes facts about the Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets. The Sorcerer's Stone's director Chris Columbus and J.K. Rowling were adamant about having an all British cast, and the author already had in mind to cast Robbie Coltrane, Maggie Smith, and Alan Rickman to play their respective roles. For the lead roles, Chris Columbus wanted to hire 3 young and inexperienced actors because he felt they would give a more honest performance and wouldn't bring any emotional baggage with them to the set. Hogwarts is 1,000 years old, and the crew wanted its design to reflect an old, timeless quality, and so cathedrals were used as a starting point for their inspiration, since they're some of the largest and oldest buildings in existence. For Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, several high-profile directors, such as Steven Spielberg, were under consideration to direct the film. However, many of them didn't get the job due to creative differences they had with J.K. Rowling. For example, Spielberg wanted Haley Joel Osment to play Harry, and also wanted to condense some of the books together. But in the end, Chris Columbus of Home Alone fame was the one chosen to direct, because J.K. Rowling said he understood the books the best, and wanted most of all to be faithful to her work. The filmmakers auditioned over 1,000 young boys for the role of Harry, but they still didn't have anyone for the part with only a few months before filming. However, one day the producer David Heyman went to see a theater production and he saw Daniel Radcliffe sitting behind him, was inspired by the way he looked, and knew he had to be the one to play Harry Potter. Chris Columbus also came across Radcliffe when he saw him in BBC's David Copperfield, and knew then that he wanted the young actor to play Harry. It is often said of Harry Potter that he has his mother's eyes, but in the films they don't share the same eye color because reportedly Daniel Radcliffe was allergic to his green contacts, and as a result, had to film without them. Rupert Grint desperately wanted to play Ron because he was Rupert's favorite character. The young actor submitted a video of himself dressed up as his drama teacher and did a rap about how much he wanted to be Ron to try to get the filmmakers' attention. Amazingly, it worked, so after having only done school plays, he got a lead role in a major movie franchise. Emma Watson went through at least 7 auditions before getting the role of Hermione Granger, and she admitted to Katie Couric in an interview that she's nothing like Hermione in real life. For example, her character counterpart is a bookworm and wears nerdy clothes, whereas Emma Watson at the time didn't like to read and was obsessed with fashion. Emma Watson also had fake buck teeth to make her character more faithful to her book counterpart, but they were left out of the movie because she wasn't able to deliver her lines clearly while wearing them. One of the main challenges of working with child actors is the limited amount of time they can work each day. At the time, England's labor laws permitted the 3 young actors to work for 9.5 hours, but daily school tutoring sessions, mandatory 20-minute breaks every hour, and an hour lunch break left them with only about 4 hours of filming time each day. J.K. Rowling already had many actors in mind who she wanted to play the adult roles. However, that didn't stop other actors from trying to change her mind. For example, Robin Williams reportedly wanted to play the role of Hagrid so badly that he was willing to do the movie for free, but because of the strict No Americans casting rule, his wish wasn't granted. Along with that, Vern Troyer from Austin Powers fame was cast as Griphook, but his voice was provided by British actor Warwick Davis to keep the authenticity of the characters to be non-American. Richard Harris, who played Dumbledore, was one of the actors who actually rejected his role at first, because he didn't like choosing parts that would commit himself to multiple films. But when his granddaughter found out that he'd turned down the role, she called him up and said if he didn't say yes, she would never speak to him again. So, he changed his mind. Harry Potter movies are filled with amazing amounts of detail, and one of these Easter eggs is that the Leaky Cauldron sign is blank until Hagrid and Harry approach in order to ward off muggles unless a wizard is nearby to reveal it. There's a subtle hint about Snape's connection to Harry's mother Lily when he asks the young wizard a question about asphodel. In Victorian flower language, asphodel is a type of lily and is symbolic for regret and remembrance beyond the grave, and wormwood can symbolize bitter sorrow. So in a way, Snape is really giving Harry a coded message about his bitter regret for Lily's death that he'll remember beyond the grave. Pretty cool connection, huh? The Canterbury Cathedral was first considered to be the location of Hogwarts, but at the time the clergy disapproved of the book's pagan imagery, so the offer was declined. The Great Hall was designed after the dining hall of the Christ Church College in Oxford, using the same physical dimensions and York stone flooring in its design. They used real food for the banquet in the Great Hall, but after a few hours under the hot lights, the food began to smell pretty bad. So for future films, the food was made from molds to maintain its tasty appearance without the bad smell and the mess. According to Chris Columbus, 80% of the owls delivering mail were real. However, they only used a few trained owls at a time to avoid any mid-air collisions, and then compiled all the shots together and filled in the rest with CG owls. Fantasy movies require a lot of special effects, and this film was no different with more than 700 visual effects shots. However, the wizard chessboard was a real set, and Chris Columbus often went in to check on its progress because he was so excited to film that scene. Ron's sacrifice in the full-size wizard chess game is foreshadowed early on in the film when he and Harry are playing in the Great Hall, and the way Harry loses mirrors the way Ron sacrifices himself to save his friends. J.K. Rowling was considered to play Lily Potter inside the Mirror of Erised, but she declined the offer to avoid messing up the movie in any way. The late James Horner was first considered to write the score for Harry Potter, but he turned down the offer because he reportedly was more interested in art films than commercial ones. So instead, we got stuck with second-string John Williams, who has composed some of the most forgettable themes of all time. Daniel Radcliffe admitted that before being cast as Harry, he didn't like to read, and hadn't read any of the Harry Potter books either. But after he got the role, he started to read all the books that had been released at the time, and from there he actually grew to really like reading. Warner Brothers first considered animating the Harry Potter films to simplify the production, especially to avoid issues over the rapid aging of the young actors between movies. But J.K. Rowling insisted that the movies needed to be live action and not animated. So instead, Warner Brothers decided to film all the movies as close together as possible, so the kids wouldn't age too much between films. The young actors were known for pulling pranks on people on the sets, and one that was pulled on Robbie Coltrane was when Daniel Radcliffe reprogrammed his phone to be in Turkish. However, they had a bit of trouble trying to figure out how to change it back, and Robbie Coltrane was pretty upset once they did figure it out, so Daniel Radcliffe wrote him a letter to apologize for what he did. The first book and its movie had two titles depending on where you lived. The UK version was called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, but the US version changed the word philosopher to sorcerer, because J.K. Rowling's publisher was concerned that American children wouldn't be interested in a book about philosophy. In case you didn't know though, there is an actual legend about a Philosopher's Stone that could turn ordinary metals into gold and silver, and it also had healing powers to grant someone eternal youth. Chris Columbus, who directed the first two movies, wanted to make sure what young kids saw on the screen matched what they imagined the Harry Potter world to look like from reading the books. To help him do this, Columbus would occasionally let his 12-year-old daughter review the daily footage, to find out how effective the movie's visuals were living up to the book. A method the filmmakers used to make the actors feel part of the wizarding world was requiring anyone who appeared on screen to go through a Hogwarts training school, which included the three main actors, as well as all the extras, the stunt doubles, and even the stand-ins. You may not have known that David Thewlis auditioned to be in the first movie as Professor Quirrell, but even though he didn't get the part, it seemed to be for the best anyway, because he was eventually given the much more substantial role of Professor Lupin. Movies are usually filmed out of order to be more efficient with the budget and the actor's filming schedule. However, according to ScreenRant.com, the first movie was filmed in chronological order, to help the young lead actors have an easier time keeping track of their character arcs. Dumbledore and Hermione were specifically chosen by the screenwriter to give most of the movie's exposition, because Dumbledore is a wise master teacher, so he would naturally know everything, and Hermione could also be used to explain everything because she's a bookworm. Kenneth Branagh's teeth aren't as straight as his characters are supposed to be, so he wore veneers to give him a perfect smile to match his character's description from the book. While filming The Chamber of Secrets, there was a lice outbreak, and nobody seems to know where or who the lice came from, but it got to be so widespread that filming had to be postponed until everyone was cured. Harry Potter movies are filled with amazing amounts of detail. An area of detail that you may not have known about is in the Weasley house that had drawings from real children hanging on their walls. For Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, it took 250 people to build the set for Dumbledore's office, and they commissioned several artists to paint the sleeping portraits that didn't require any movement. If you love puns, here's a good knee slapper for you that was created by the set designers. The entrance to Dumbledore's office is a griffin, or in other words, it's a griffin door. For Ron's spell that backfired, Rupert Grint spat out fake slugs that were covered in a variety of tasty slime flavors, such as chocolate, lemon, orange, and peppermint. They wanted to film the greenhouse scene in London's Kew Gardens, but when they scouted it out, they realized it wouldn't work, so they built their own gardens inside a soundstage instead. During the duel between Harry and Draco, you can spot a cameraman on the left side of the crowd after Draco gets knocked down by Harry. Draco's line to Harry, who was disguised as Goyle, was improvised, because Tom Felton forgot what line he was really supposed to say instead. Another ad-lib from the Malfoys was near the end of the movie in Dumbledore's office. Originally, there wasn't any line written for Lucius to say to Harry before leaving the scene, but Jason Isaacs felt that his character had to say something threatening to Harry before he left. So during one take, Isaacs decided to make something up, and Daniel Radcliffe fired back with an ad-libbed line of his own. A variety of looks were tried on Jason Isaacs to find the perfect look for Lucius Malfoy, which at one point included dyeing his eyebrows white to match his hair. But in the end, the hairdressers felt that his white eyebrows diminished the strength of his character, so they left them as Isaac's natural color instead. To save time and money, some of the sets were repurposed to be used later on in the film series. For example, Ollivander's wand shop from the first movie was the same set used for the Flourish and Blotts bookstore in Chamber of Secrets. Aragog was initially going to be made using CG because of how big and complex of a creature he was. However, the visual effects team was able to convince Chris Columbus to let them make a practical model of the giant arachnid instead. And if it didn't work out, they'd just go with their original idea to use CG. But when everyone saw the first screen test of their live-action Aragog, they were completely convinced that making him a CG spider wouldn't be necessary. The basilisk snakeskin was 40 feet long and was constructed using urethane rubber. The filmmakers intended to have the basilisk be a CG creature and only make a practical version of the head for the close-ups, but they ended up building a full-scale basilisk that used aquatronics to make his movements smooth and snake-like. They also built fangs that could be retracted with cables, and the inside of its body was made up of aluminum ladders with foam latex wrapped around them to toughen up the look of its skin. A compilation video for the next 3 movies will be coming soon, but in the meantime, click to watch another video on the channel to keep learning more fun facts about your favorite films.